Hi, everybody. Welcome to my interview with last Epoch devs Mike in Carve. It's been a while since I saw you, Carve. It's what, XLCon, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. And Mike, we've had a couple of interviews in the past already. Welcome aboard, everybody. So, how you doing, Mike?
Doing great. Feeling good. It's I always love doing these, so I'm excited to see what we get some spicy questions in here, and we've got some good stuff to share.
For sure, for sure. And Carve, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Pretty excited. We got some good stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So.
Photon sent me some images here in the Discord here that we're going to be showing. Quite excited to show these, actually.
Yeah, that's probably more images to be coming later that we just didn't want to dump immediately here. So yeah.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Well, we have about 1 or 2 hours to basically put you guys on in the furnace. So I'm just gonna go straight into this. And you guys have been spammed. I've been spammed. Everyone's talking about it. I'm gonna get rid of the elephant in the room, and that is obviously the scheduling. 2 days after you guys are launching, PoE 2 is coming out. What's the take here? Like, what's the how do I read this room? Because everyone's kind of upset about it.
Yeah, we're disappointed along with everyone else on this, and we're just focusing on our season 2 right now, and just building the hype and excitement for what we've got coming out. That's our big focus right now.
That sounds good.
Yeah, we got good stuff coming in, so it's worthy to get excited for. So
yeah,
I'm not disappointed, but yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, I've been trying my best not to spill the beans on the CT stuff, but the stuff I've seen is very exciting.
Thank you.
Well, let's go into
It's hard not to say anything, though, isn't it?
I know. I'm just sitting here with a grin on my face. People asking questions. What about this? What about that? And I'm like, I know exactly the answer to that. Well, we haven't gotten access to everything, which I think is good. And I've been trying not to explore too much of the in-depth stuff. So on launch, a lot of things will still be kind of fresh for me, which is going to be very fun. So this interview, we're going to be focusing on basically class rework and balance. So those are the main overlaying themes of this interview. So that's the questions we're going to be following up for the rest of this interview is going to be with that theme. And I'm going to start off with number 1 in my little list here, which is about meta shakeups and how you guys are intending to tackling balance in general, both in terms of timelines, such as, only having changes on every launch or mid-seasonal changes, and also asking if the idea is to nerf outliers at the top or rather exclusively bringing underperforming builds up on par.
Yeah, it's it's a combination approach of basically everything you've got there. So we really want to take those builds that are crazy outliers, because there's a few of them that are a little wacky what they can do, and bringing those down to the realms of reality. And but we are raising the floor on a lot of builds right now. So there's a lot of new stuff coming in that's going to make a lot of builds that were not working, not having a great time. You get to endgame, you're trying to push through some of the more difficult content. So bringing the floor up on a lot of builds is really important at the same time. Getting everything into that like 80%, 80 to 100% range is I think it's the goal in general, yeah. And we're not really interested in the mid-season changes yet. So we are still focusing on that, getting things near the start of the season as much as possible.
Fair enough. When we asked the community, don't even remember where it was about mid-season changes, they were pretty against it, for a good reason. It's like, imagine playing something really fun and then it just gets nuked out of orbit because it was just too good. So we generally try to avoid that as much as possible, and then only do it like buggy interactions and whatnot. So yeah.
That's fair.
What comes to the nerfing overperformers versus just buffing everything else, this patch, the floor is gonna come up because we have new stuff that's gonna give you new power. So obviously the maximum amount of power you can get is gonna go up, and then the gearing, like the plateau of how quickly you start having issues upgrading your gear, is gonna last longer because there's gonna be so much new stuff to help you craft. And obviously, let's say, this is random numbers. Let's say you have 1,000 builds, and out of those 1,000 builds, there's like 10 that are just 1,000 times better than everything else. It's a lot easier to target nerf those down while buffing the rest a bit versus trying to bring everything up, because that would also buff the overperformers. Because when the games get as complicated as we have. If you buff something, it's most likely going to affect something else too. Because we have like stuff like triggering other abilities, and if you buff an item that is used in like 10 builds, then every build is going to get a buff and so on. So
That's fair. I remember former class lead design Adam Jackson for Diablo 4. He used a hand gesture and basically said they want to have builds within this frame, and they want to bring builds above this line down to this frame, and builds beneath it up to that frame, and have basically everything existent exist within this parameter of build performance. And we have other games like PoE, for example, who are perfectly fine with builds basically just being really bad. And then they want to try to have a kind of a healthy frame in this hand gesture moment here, with a couple of outliers every meta shakeups that are performing a bit better. What is the approach of that kind of theme moving forward with Last Epoch? Are you okay with builds being underperforming, or do you want all of the builds to exist within this parameter?
I mean, I think it's a good way of describing it, and I think in a perfect world, everything would be in that range. Where like there are certain things that need to be more stronger, and there are certain things that need to be weaker in order for like you feel like when you're making good decisions in the game, and you're like, hey, I figured out a way to make my build stronger. Something has to be weaker for that to be true, and so there's never nothing. Getting everything to the exact same level is a fool's errand, and it's never going to work. It's never going to happen, and we don't want to. But yes, getting everything into a closer range where like the lower performing ones are still viable is ideal. We know we're never going to have like if someone wants to try and take some build that is I get in trouble when I say this because I say some ridiculous build and someone's like I'm going to make it work. But there's always certain things that are just so ridiculous that you're just not going to make them. It's just not going to happen.
That's fair.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next question, which is kind of a big one, and it's about defenses. The first one we cover is balanced approach comparing health versus ward, and we've been existing in this pendulum swinging back and forth. We had this huge life meta, and then it swung back to ward meta, then we was back to life meta, and then we're back in ward again. So what's the approach of available toolkits and balancing the differences between health and ward moving forward from here?
Yeah, we might just end discussing this topic for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah.
If we, so yeah, you're right. Ward has been really good and it's been really bad. And on launch, it was really good, and then we brought it down a bit, not enough. So there's going to be more changes to slightly nerf ward where it needs a nerf, but we're also buffing health. I think the first thing would be that int is just a very good stat to stack. You get all the great stuff, especially for specific classes like acolytes and a mage. So we are reducing the ward retention you get from int from 4 to 2%, and then we're going to be targeting cases where skills or passives are just very good at generating ward out of like nowhere. I think we gave you a picture of one of the nodes for Acolyte.
The putrid? I can bring it up.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so that one specifically, you get ward when you hit a target that is afflicted by Spirit Plague. So that is just, whenever you hit something that has it, you get ward. With 3 points, that's like 12 ward per hit. And with some cool skill interactions, you can get a lot of hits per second. Especially because stuff like Bone Curse is considered a hit, so you get like double the effect there. So what we're doing is we are curtailing the power of like these absolutely insane amount of applications per second, but we're buffing the individual cases. So builds that aren't like abusing those 1 million hits a second are gonna be better, and those that were abusing are gonna be worse. So we got cases like this in a couple items. I think just a couple rings that have like ward on hit and stuff like that. And then overall, ward is just like way too easy to get from passives and skills. So we're moving a lot of that into items. So there's a couple new like I think affixes for ward. So it takes more gear now to get that.
So basically, the power is moved more away from the passive, the free access, and moved into gear progression to build it up. And just if everyone's clear, this one up here is the current version of Putrid Recovery, and the one down here is after the changes on the bottom here.
Yeah, so numbers going up. It's a big buff, right?
It's quite extensive, yes.
Unless you were hitting like 100 times a second, then
Unless,
it's,
yeah.
then it's a nerf. Yeah.
Then it's a nerf,
As for health, health was basically all tied to gear in most cases. You get a decent amount of passives and whatnot, but then we have like these crazy items like, you know, the stout idol that has a double health. It has increased health and it has a flat health. So I think we removed the flat health from there.
Yep.
And then because it's now we're nerfing the health belts there. So what we ended up doing is we're buffing some of the health values on affixes. I think we introduced 1 or 2 new health affixes, like hybrid affixes. One is regen, so regen is going to be pretty good this patch, which previously haven't really been. It's only like couple very specific builds that were really good with regen, but now it's going to be
like the Vessel of Strife, right, from Julra. Is it?
Yeah. Oh, that item might specifically have been nerfed a tiny bit to compensate.
God damn it.
Yep. And then we also increased the health gain per level. So I think it's currently 8 health you get whenever your character levels up. In Season 2, it's going to be 10. So you're just going to get more health just from levels as well from that.
And health potions are more effective now too.
Okay. Do you guys think that this is going to be enough to get like a balance between the two so you don't feel like you're scuffed for playing life or the other ward instead? Do you feel like they're going to be pretty balanced with this, or how's the confidence in this?
You're going to see health builds, especially in classes that are good with it, and you hopefully also see ward builds for those classes, especially like Mage and Acolyte, because they have a lot of support for that, so they should be good with it. As for like the ultimate, like I've seen a lot of talk about we should just cap ward to be like a percentage of your max health or something like that. I mean, we could do that, but it's just boring. It's just boring. We'd rather try to slowly balance it so they're both really good and cool, and maybe some hybrids where you do both and stuff like that. Because it's just fun trying to break the game with stuff like that. It's just fun.
Fair enough. I mean, I like the approach, especially like with removing the whole double life idols. It's so frustrating is a good way to put it. At least for COF, to try to find these double life idols because of how valuable they are for the defensive layers of your character. But speaking of defensive layers, there's another question we have, which is about the crazy differences in performance between different ailments. And the question is if this is going to be tackled in the new season with ailments specifically. I'm not talking about just taking the damage from ailments, but also applying those type of ailments. So is there something you could cover or leak for us here regarding this for Season 2?
I mean, there's no leak. There's only teasers and knowledge, I guess. You'll be taking less damage from damage over time overall, just globally. Enemies will deal less damage to you now. I think it's like 15%.
15, yeah.
And then on top of that, corruption. You know, the corruption providing more damage to enemies. That is half as effective for dots. So if they, grant 200% more damage, they only get 100% damage for dots.
Okay, because I've been doing some rounds talking to some Last Epoch creators that mainly make content for Last Epoch, and Sagan Survives is a content creator that I was talking to that had a question specifically about damage over time that you take because of how reducing the dot damage taken and higher corruptions it has become such a mandatory stat. So the changes you were talking about, lowering the corruption impact on that specifically, is the solution to that problem. Am I understanding you correctly then?
Yeah, right. So we could just introduce more different mechanics for you to reduce dot damage, but then that puts more pressure on gear, which you already have a lot of pressure on gear for damage mitigation, because we're scaling like the damage and health of enemies with corruption like at the same time. So they end up doing more damage before they die from your damage. So it's very heavily lopsided to just investing in the defense in the end game in Last Epoch currently.
Fair enough.
As for some of the elements that players do, so specifically 2 elements tied to Sentinel. So Electrify, which is like the holy lightning damage over time, is getting a lot more support for Paladin now. I think you might have a couple pictures of that somewhere.
Yeah, we do actually.
Yeah.
It was just so buried and like impossible to get things that scaled with it, and there was
had like a couple uniques. Yeah, it had like a couple uniques that were basically you had to use them. You're probably still gonna use some of them. I think we nerfed some of them a tiny bit because we made it just more accessible to actually scale electrify as a paladin now. So we introduced a new affix, which I think spawns both on helmets and body armors, which is just electrify chance with lightning skills. And then on the paladin passive tree, there's some more electrify support, as well as a new like an actual scaler. There's a new node that provides you more lightning damage over time based on your crit multi. So if you have like 300% crit multi from gear, so this is the crit multi on top of the base. So the base crit multi isn't calculated here. So if you have like 300% crit multi, that's I think 150% more lightning damage over time. So maybe there's some hybrid hit dot lightning builds out there. Who knows?
I think we've got a picture for that one too, actually.
Yeah, we do.
The
Judgment of Storm.
Yes, I have.
Is the node? Yes.
Here's the electrify example.
Judgment of the Storm.
This is for the electrify support for paladins.
Yeah.
Which has a threshold node. A very important point out. It's a threshold node, which we kind of want to see more in Acolyte, by the way. Shock chance, lightning, rest, shred, and electrify chance. And the threshold is you'll deal more lightning damage over time, multiplicative with other modifiers per 2% added crit multi above the base 200. So that's how you bypass the base. Then say we added or crit multi above that is what's adding to it.
Yep. And somebody in the chat asked if this affix is only for Sentinels, and yes. Sentinel, well, paladin more specifically, because it's the ailment is like the holy themed, so that's why it's very heavily tied to just Sentinel and paladin specifically.
Does that mean that the electrify modifier would only show up on Sentinel specific items?
Yep. Yes, that affix, the electrify chance with lightning skills, is only for Sentinels. Just like you have like plus level of skills for individual skills for different classes on like body armor, relics, and chests.
So then I would assume that if you get the craft charts for that modifier, you can then put it on non-Sentinel pieces as well. But you will never drop a non-Sentinel piece that has that modifier on it.
Like you want crafting it.
No, it has to always go on Sentinel. You cannot get that mod on any class other than a Sentinel.
Can't even craft it on it.
No,
yep.
No.
Okay. Same thing. Yeah, same thing for other. Like affixes like that. And then the other ailment is something that people know exists, but it's basically just a the stat that you have for some builds, and that's time rot.
You have an image for that too.
Yes, time rot is actually a ailment now that you can make pretty crazy. We didn't want to just make it like every other ailment, which would be uncapped, which caused a lot of the problems with balance and just tech issues. We're not gonna probably go into too much with that. But that meant we had to have like unique scalars for it, basically, because like on ailments, you get like pen, you get damage, you get duration, like how many you can apply as soon as possible. So since time rot is still capped at 12, we need to find basically more multipliers for it that allow you to scale the damage of it. So one of them is time rot chance with void skills. And this does not account for the chance on individual skills. So this is like the global stat. So if you have like Warbath, let's say had like 100% chance, that wouldn't apply for this. So this is just globally from like passive skill trees, not skill trees, gear like idols, or in this case again body armor and helmet, because we made an affix for that. And then we have slow, because that's very thematic. Time rot, it's a time based, right? So we have slow. And then we have the lowest of, I think it's attack, cast, and throwing speeds. So you have to invest in all of those three stats, and it picks the lowest as the multiplier. So there's you can get this to do some crazy damage now. Previously, it was just basically a debuff for some abilities, like Erasing Strike does like more damage if enemy has 12 stacks of it. But now you can just make Time Rod actually do damage, which is pretty exciting.
No, for sure. I mean, this one's really, really interesting. You guys were talking about this in the previous interview with spreading out some of the power from the Sentinel in general to create the more of a balanced approach to it, right? And this is one of those changes to allow the Time Rod to be more of a competitive damage approach, right? That's my understanding of it, at least.
Yeah, and you will be able to see. You will be seeing Time Rod builds in season 2. Yes, you will definitely be seeing them.
For sure. Let's move over to another question, and that is, well, actually, before we move over to the question, I do want to talk about damage over time and ailments. We've seen the Time Rod stuff, Electrify. Are there any other changes to existing dots like Frostbite or Poison, for example?
I don't think we have any actual changes to any of those ailments, but as we create more items that support those ailments, they can get better. Like Bleed probably has the most amount of support from different ailments. But that's also because it's available for basically every single class in the game. We have the Electrify that is very tied to just being Paladin. We have Frostbite that is basically Mage, Primalist, and now we're slowly adding some of that into Rogue with some of the changes. But yeah,
fair enough.
There isn't any actual ailment changes to them themselves this patch.
All right.
No, the base functionality of those ailments is staying the same, but there are other things that can affect those coming.
Okay. Gonna be exciting to see. Moving over to the next topic, it is monoliths, which is kind of like the main theme of the season, essentially the end game, right? So end game is being heavily focused for this specific seasonal launch, and I guess the question, or one of the small questions we can start with here is, will we have player agency control over manually juicing individual monoliths? Like examples could be like Scarabs or Deliors in PoE, for example. Is that something you guys are planning to do?
Yes.
Yes. Care to elaborate?
Do you want to take this?
I can talk about this. So one of the main key features of this patch and this whole season is woven echoes, and those are specific activities that you know what they're going to be. You can see what they're going to be. You physically place them into your timeline echo web, and you can make new paths opening up with them. You can connect nodes that you're like, oh, I don't want to go through this one. I want to go around it. You can make paths around it now. And they are itemized. So they are things that you are going to be finding out in the world. And as you find them, you'll be able to be like, okay, now I've got one of these in my pocket. I can go do this whenever I want. And you can start it. It sits into the web. So it behaves, it respects the distance from the center modifiers and corruption modifiers. And all of those apply to it. So you can juice up some pretty sweet stuff there if you want. Not quite in the same. Probably shouldn't use that word. Not in the same sense that you can use it in other systems. But yeah, there's a lot of customization that you can have with what content you're going to be tackling that you just didn't have before.
Yeah, to add there a bit, maybe we are not really keen on like super micromanagement stuff, like Elden Rings or the old sextants in PoE or Scarabs on Delirium Orbs like that. So it's actually very challenging to try to come up with systems that allow you to do that kind of choosing that doesn't devolve into this massive amount of preparation for every single area that you go to. We have maybe, I think we have a few of the woven echoes that will have an impact on other woven echo, like other echoes, also sometimes in woven echoes when you do them. But we don't have crazy plans or adding this patch anything like that you would think of, like Scarabs or tablets and towers in PoE 2 or stuff like that. We're very on the go in, have fun, you get out, then you go into the next one instead of setting up half an hour to go in and then do a bunch of stuff.
Fair enough. What you guys talked about in the teaser was showing the inventory tabs, right? Can we assume that these juicers, if you will be available in a separate tab, or will we have our inventory clogged up with these?
Every single woven echo has a slot on the tab. Yes.
Just to verify.
Yeah, they each have their own individual slots that they go into, and there's an option to have them go directly there automatically without having to sort them there manually. They just go in. They never touch your inventory if you don't want them to. But if you do want them to go into your inventory, you can.
Okay, so you can
If you-
move them out
yeah.
if you want to. Okay.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that,
You can. Yeah, you can. I think it's shift right click. You can just spam those, and they will be dropped from the inventory to the ground if you want to. And obviously, you can just pick them up on your inventory and then press the button to slurp them in at the same time if you like that. But yeah, they will all be with you all the time. And I think it's also shared between the stash. So yeah, you'll just have them there with you all the time.
It should be stash linked. So yeah, so all of your like non-solo softcore characters have them, and all of your non-solo hardcore characters have a separate set. They're not shared between those things. So everyone that shares a stash shares the Woven Echoes stash.
Okay, I do have a follow-up question then. I mean, it sounds great, and I love the idea of player agency. Same thing with the whole shards being automatic, couldn't assume crafting shards that is, or you can choose to have them in your inventory to click the transfer button. I have no idea who's psychopathic, like the psychopaths that would actually want to do that, but they exist. However, these things being itemized, if you will, to become an actual physical item, if you will, that kind of brings up the question whether or not are they tradable and giftable as well. No.
They're not tradable or giftable. However, because you can bring anyone into your Echo Web, you can just start it in your Echo Web and bring someone else with you, and they get the full benefits from it. So it's they're shareable in the sense that you can do them together in a party of people, but you can't physically just be like, here you go, you go take this one. They're not going to be for sale on the auction on the bazaar. Yeah, they are locked. They're character or they're account bound.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's the same case for everything that is like an unmodifiable item, like runes, shards, stuff like that. We could go into a very deep rabbit hole discussing why that is, but there is a world where those might be tradable in the future, but it requires some big changes to how item factions work.
Okay.
But it is something that is technically possible, but it runs into some design problems. But yeah, maybe we'll talk about it at some point.
We'll get there. All right, moving over to the next part of the end game is the current state of bosses have a ward system that prevents them from essentially getting one shot and or kill too fast. There's obviously a lot of comments around the system, including things like Culling Strike, where you execute the monster at a certain life threshold, having a severely diminished value as a result of this, and it's considered more often a moment of frustration. So the question of this is, how is this system going to be changed in the new season, if at all?
Well, yeah. First of all, it doesn't actually like full one-shot prevention is not there. Like if you hit it hard enough that you can deal enough damage for all of its health and all of the ward bars all at the same time, it will just one-shot it. Like so that is technically possible to do. You can one-shot them if you have enough damage up front. It doesn't create like spots where it just like removes all damage off and then you have to start over or something like that. But yeah, it's a hotly debated topic for sure, and it is providing we think a very important functionality to the end game system. But at the same time, it is showing up in a lot of places that it doesn't need to. So we're removing it from almost the vast majority of cases that are that have it. It's not going to be there anymore. It's just going to be a straight health bar like normal. And then in the more significant, like really grandiose boss fights, those are going to still have a boss ward system, because and what it really does is it does help those builds that are maybe struggling to do quite as much damage to get those boss fights a little bit quicker.
So when you say that like there's a line where they're not needed, now they're needed. We don't have to go into the detail of it, but I guess the only question I have is, does this mean that the campaign bosses do not have this ward system anymore?
I think it's on some campaign bosses, but it's nowhere close to as what you've used to seeing.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's a good change.
Yeah. Also
for the kill now.
Sorry.
Yeah. Also for the kill threshold part of that question, we think it's a good thing because it's very, very powerful. So it actually doing that is, it's a good thing that it reduces the power of that a bit.
Fair enough.
Yeah, kill threshold is really it's almost mandatory without a system like this. And even with it, it's still crazy powerful. But that's not like a bad thing to have that you need to slot in, because basically every class does have access to it in some way or another.
That's true. Another endgame question or monolith question is a rather big one covering corruption in general. So favor farming, which is also impacting item acquisition, experience gain, and LP item chances, for example. But most importantly, favor farming being such a big factor in how you progress your characters. It seems very heavily favored around a 1,000 corruption at the moment, in the current state of the game at least. So I guess the question comes down to what the intended corruption that EHG wants people to consider to be the actual end game for good and great or beyond builds.
Before Mike goes on a rant here, one thing that we didn't say about the boss ward is that it also just decays faster now.
Oh, that's even better. Thank you.
Carver and I debate this. We when we were prepping for this, we actually got into a bit of a debate on this topic ourselves. So it's something that is, we it's not always cut and dry on what the best idea is. And I think as long as there's like crazy, like extreme outlier builds, there's gonna be it's gonna be a bit of an issue. And bringing those extreme outlier builds down is probably the most important part of balancing this, I think.
So where would you say a good end game build? What is the considered end game corruption level from ESG standpoint? Then
I would say if you have a
It's
build.
hard. You go ahead.
Sorry,
go
he
ahead.
can go. I'll go. Yeah.
You go.
Like Mike was about to say, it's very hard to quantify that because there's so many things that you can do with your builds. And if you make nothing but bad decisions with your builds, it probably shouldn't be able to do a certain amount of corruption. And we want there to be options for people to also make bad builds. Because if you can't make a bad build, you can't really make a good build because everything's the same. As for, let's say that you have the decent understanding of the game and how to make a build, if it can comfortably do like 300 corruption, I'd call it a successful build. The amount of, with so many topics right now in my mind right now. So when we're talking about the favor farming and whatnot, we already have diminishing returns starting from, I think, is it like 300 corruption, then 500 corruption, and then finally on the 1,000 mark, the benefits you get from each point of corruption for experience matters a lot less. Yeah. So and then there's the question of, okay, should at some point there be nothing anymore? And the only thing that matters anymore, like when corruption arises, the only thing that goes up is the difficulty. Because if we were to do that, now we are setting a very specific threshold that means viability for every single build in the game. If it's at 500, there's a lot of viable builds. If it's at 1,000, suddenly there's a lot less viable builds. If it's at 2,000, so we'd rather I don't want to say not punish. We rather reward people for being able to do higher difficulty. But it's just a question, like there's a balance of how much should they be rewarded for, and that's why we do have the diminishing returns. Maybe those should be higher. Maybe the corruption scaling should be faster than it is right now. There's a lot of questions around this. Just ignoring the balance, there's a lot of like pure design questions here that needs to be answered before you get and decided on before you can get proper decisions made there. And we have people. We debate this a lot internally. So yeah.
It's also about, there's an important factor here about the time it takes to get that corruption as well. So at some point, if it is a like what paths you have to, how fast you can increase your corruption, and how long that actually takes of gameplay time. Because we want you to stay challenged. We want you to stay. That's the important thing, is that you are still being challenged as you're advancing the difficulty of content that you're like able to do. So you get more powerful, but you still get challenged because you still have more challenges to take on. And having that curve feel good is really important.
That's fair.
Oh, yeah.
next question was to talk about the time requirement in moving from normal monos to corrupted ones. But before I touch on that, I want to verify one question. In the current state of the game, the Aberoth, the big endgame pinnacle boss, is something you unlock at 300 corruption. Now we're being told that that fight is going to be made slightly easier, and the power creep, power scaling your character is going to go up a bit as well. Like the very ground is going to move up, the bar. With these things in mind, are we going to still see this first initial version of Aberoth being at 300 corruption? That's not changing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not changing, and it's still gonna be there isn't many like nerfs to it. It's still gonna be a challenging fight for a lot of people and builds that aren't like super optimized. It's still gonna be a difficult fight.
Yeah, like bringing a homebrew build to Aberoth as you've just finished 300 corruption is going to be a very significant achievement to be able to do. Right now, most people are hitting 300, trying Aberoth, and being like, I'm nowhere near powerful enough. I've got to farm a bunch at 300, and I'm actually going significantly above 300 before I'm able to do Aberoth. And so you're still going to be probably still going in immediately after completing 300 and immediately unlocking it. If you're not on a heavily optimized build, it's still going to be very, very significant accomplishment to be able to complete it right away.
It's also a very interesting discussion that we originally had the Aberoth access. I think it was at 500 or 600 corruption, and we got a lot of feedback that it would be fun to be able to attempt the fight much earlier, even if the difficulty of the fight isn't quite correspondent to the when you have access to it. So if Aberoth took like, I don't know, 600 corruption, it would take you a bit longer to get to. You would have easier time fighting it, because if you can do 600 corruption, you're gonna have a lot easier time fighting Aberoth as well. But we wanted, and that's also why we provide you like 10 Harbinger eyes for testing, like attempting it. If you really want to push yourself and try to learn the fight already immediately at that point. So.
Okay, that's fair. So what about the time requirement on your very first character? There are catch-up mechanics in your ults, but the time requirement in moving from normal monos into the corrupted versions on your first character, what's the changes happening there, if any?
I think the only changes for that come from the Weaver tree. I don't think we have any other changes coming, but you can specialize your Weaver tree a bit so that you can get there faster. Not by much, but it's already pretty fast. If you just push one timeline with the mechanics that exist in game, like Glyph of Envy, and then you use the catch-up mechanic for the other timelines, it's surprisingly fast already. And speaking of the alts, we are adding couple new cool things for alts to be faster. So the normal timeline is now shared. So if you have a character in Empowered Monoliths and you make an alt character, you don't need to go through all of them anymore. You just go do one of the 90s, I believe, and you go straight to Empowered again if you want to.
That is a massive
and then,
change.
Yes. And then the other one is we had items to push corruption faster, but let's say that you have that one character at 1,000 corruption.
Yeah.
It can feel a bit daunting to think, okay, if I have like this crazy gear prepared for my next character, and you just want to go, fight actual harder corner with that. It takes a while to get back to the 1,000. So one of the Woven Echoes allows you to catch up corruption from the highest corruption in the stash. So if you have one character at 1,000 corruption and then you make the alt, once you complete that Woven Echo, it gets to that corruption that the other character was.
It's also really big. These are good changes.
That's very big. That's very big, yes.
And that's something that you can farm on the first character and then use on the second character still, because it's shared across the stash as well.
Nice.
The only play mode that doesn't have that is if you're playing solo character found, because it's a like actual full individual character and stash with nothing shared.
Yep.
But solo account found, and then just no challenges past that.
Yeah, it is stash shared. So yeah, everything, as long as the two characters have the same access to the same stash, then they will have this mechanic working with them.
That's fair. One of the questions we have in the list is the massive amount of extra content included in the new season, and the question was about if whether or not capping corruption scaling had been brought back to the table, but we kind of already covered that part, so I'm just going to skip that one. And instead bring up another question, which is from another Last Epoch creator called Lizard_IRL. And he was talking about the idea of the expectant approach that EHG has to the game. And the question goes as follows, and that is that a lot of us are rather interested in hearing this. It is to circle back to a commonly asked question from the past, and that is to ask what the expected DPS threshold EHG wants players to reach to handle X amount of corruption. So essentially what I'm trying to get at here is it seems like the expected endgame approach is to make the normal version of Aberoth be a fight most people can handle, or if not all people can handle this. So I guess the question to come down to actually get a proper question out of this rant, with me rambling on, is there a DPS threshold that you guys want people to achieve at, say, the Aberoth fights?
And the short answer is no. We don't have a really fixed DPS that we've like gone and measured, like, oh, this character with this type of build can do this much DPS or anything like that. We don't strictly like just measure DPS and compare that from build to build as a balancing metric, really, because there's lots of things, lots of secondary effects that builds do, like abilities they have access to that can really change how they perform in different situations. So like if, as an example, I guess if a boss is applying slow to you and your build, because you've gone full glass cannon, full DPS, and you don't have a way to cleanse that slow, you can't really complete that fight effectively. Maybe you're like, okay, I have to go rethink my build a little bit, and I've got to take some DPS away, and suddenly a DP, so you have like a way to get cleansing into your build, and suddenly this build that has less DPS is actually better overall. And so, like, strictly just DPS it doesn't tell the whole story. And it does, I guess it is something that we can use to like get a view of some parts of what the build can do, and it is probably the most important part of what a lot of builds can do. But once you get into really, really heavy late game, defenses and utility become more and more and more and more important. And so we don't really want to put a number out there to say like this is what we expect your DPS to be at any point. And we don't have good tools for our players to measure their DPS strictly as well. So it's especially character to character comparison.
With the target dummies being in the game, like just a little side question to that, is there any ideas, or are you guys against the idea of adding like a DPS meter check on the target dummies? Is that something you guys would consider?
It gets suggested pretty frequently. It's not something we're interested in right now.
Okay. Moving on to talk about the portals, which I think is a really cool way or a nice way to provide a key sync, if you will. I think that having a currency sync of the different currencies is very important in ARPGs in general. And but it does bring up the question of how valuable running the actual dungeons will be, because the portal will just take you straight to the boss room. For example, Jewel, right? If you go through a different doors, you get to choose, right? This door allows you the boss to drop X amount of extra exalted items, and this one says, well, now you're gonna drop extra glyphs or whatever. So the question would be, are the portals going to give you a random set of these, or you're just bypassing and the boss will just give you less loot as a result of you skipping the dungeon?
No, the portal does give you, it picks a random door. And I mean, how often has anyone gone to a door and been like, I'm going to see what the other door actually has, and like go back through the maze, the other one, and check it and be like, no, the first one was better. I'm going to go back that way again. Like, no one does that ever. You get to the door and you're like, yep, I'll take that one, whatever it is. I guess that's what I got. So yeah, we are, the portal charm does pick one of them randomly for you. So you do still get those mods, and so it doesn't affect the actual final outcome of your rewards for the dungeon.
So also important that it does that, because those modifiers are also buffing the boss.
Yes.
So
follow-up
we actually had a bug. We had a bug where they weren't applying. So using a portal charm to go fight dungeon bosses was actually the optimal way if you just wanted to kill it, because it was easier because the mods weren't applying to it. So yeah.
And we are bringing like random things into the dungeons as well. So like there are you like a loot lizard can spawn in a dungeon, and like so there are things like that that can happen in there as well.
So my follow-up questions is more than about the actual value of running it. When we have access to just skipping straight to the boss and we get the juicing up of the loot with difficulty added, what's the point of running the dungeon then?
I mean, maybe you don't have a portal charm yet.
You don't have a portal charm. Okay, because I mean, are there plans to adding more content inside these dungeons to make them more attractive for people to choose to run rather than skipping?
I was
Yes,
about to
definitely.
ask GHAZZY, how many times have you actually farmed the dungeon for the sole purpose of farming the dungeon and not whatever is at the end of the dungeon? Be it boss
When we're
uniques or the yeah, you're going like way back. You're going like multiple years back now. If you're saying the Temporal Sanctum was good for like belts or boots or stuff like that, we're going way back then.
I
But
was about to
yes, it
say
will
that,
be
yes.
yes. We yeah, eventually, but the dungeons need to feel way better from like user experience before we feel like it's worth making the reward so good. Because if something is really unfun to do, but it's the most rewarding, people are gonna do it and they're gonna really hate playing the game while doing it. So
Fair
the
enough.
user experience needs to be good before stuff like that will happen.
And
So
there is a bunch of tech you're going to see in season 2 for the tombs, especially, that I think we're going to be looking to leverage for dungeons in the future. So yeah, there are a lot of things we want to do. I feel like the dungeon system is there's a lot of untapped potential there for interesting content, for fun content, for rewarding content, all these things to happen. But the quality of that experience isn't at a point where we want to really incentivize people to be heavily interacting with it. Like, we like some light interaction there because I think it's fun the first few times, especially. And then your 80th time through the Temporal Sanctum, and you're like, this dead end again.
Yeah,
So
no, I know that feeling all too well. Especially when you play builds that want it, Vessel's Drive, Jeweler's Obsession,
yep.
Mountain Helmet, etc. for the different dungeons, right? But let's move on to class reworks. We've already teased a little bit with Electrify, Time Rod, Judgment of the Storm. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Sentinel rework. And what I want to do is take a moment to take the cool things aside, such as being able to wield a two-handed weapon and a shield, for example. That's a cool thing. We'll take that aside. So what's the approach to the season in making melee a more attractive playstyle compared to the current meta killing entire screens, actually, of monsters just from afar?
Yeah, I
Do
mean,
you want to start? Yeah. Okay.
you can go ahead if you got something for this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we could make melee every single skill literally hit the entire screen, but is it melee then? Not really, right? So it's like an age-old question in RPGs, or in games in general. How do you do that? There's a lot of things you can do there. They're very difficult and time-consuming and whatnot.
I think
And
a lot of the
we
stuff we're trying to do with melee is making the feel of their abilities feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So like getting more responsiveness in, getting like better VFX, getting better SFX, things like that, having enemy reactions, and like a lot of those things. A lot of the like having better fit and finish on those abilities makes just playing them a lot more fun. And getting the power balance in there as far as how fast you can kill things is kind of a different conversation, but maybe that's more what people are interested in knowing, is like, can I just kill stuff faster as melee? And we are adding a ton of different ways to kill things faster in melee, I guess, especially in Sentinel right now. That's the big focus. And like we're getting abilities. There's lots of the abilities that we designed specifically to make you more efficient on melee focused classes. So like even just down to the base functionality of lunge, where it like you're targeting an enemy and it gets you right up close really fast. It is one of the fastest moving abilities. It is it's a very efficient movement ability at engaging into close range combat. And leaning into that as much as possible, I think is the important part.
it's also very difficult to have like a global something globally for melee that doesn't bleed into non-melee. So like if you have, let's say that you have a enemy is near you, deal less damage. Well, then every single ranged build will just go into melee range of enemies because now they deal less damage to it. So it's very difficult to do something, especially for classes like we don't have a class that is just melee. Every class can do other things. For example, Sentinel. Well, you have minions. You can do throwing. You can do spells. So it's very difficult to buff the one side without accidentally bleeding into others. Obviously, we are looking into ways to do that, but it's very, very difficult to find something that works very well.
So
And this also comes into like boss, like enemy attacks as well. With having so like someone like the things that are attacking you being having abilities that they can use only on enemies that are at long range, and then incentivizing characters that are not melee characters to stay at long range through their own trees. So it's this tension that they have of, okay, if I'm going to stay at range, I'm going to get hit with these abilities that melee won't get hit with, or that it's easier to dodge in melee because of the shape of the ability or something like that.
Yeah, we have a lot of cone-shaped, like, triangles. So if you're close to the boss, you just take a small sidestep and you're out of it. Whereas if you're far away from it, you have a very big distance you have to go through. I think a good example is the Aberoth, like the triple, the slam. It's hits front and then to the sides. If you're right next to it, it's very easy to dodge. If you're very far away from it, it's pretty hard to take away from that. So yeah.
We had I had a question from another LE content creator, Perry the Pig, was talking about, beyond the melee playstyle with the introduction of Aberoth. The question was about having tools for melee players to utilize when it comes to positional important fights such as endgame pinnacles, like the new Aberoth fight. So you're saying that with the way the abilities are designed, it is beneficial to be in melee range, which is more lucrative or beneficial for melee players in general, that they don't seem to have the need for any specific new tools to mitigate damage. Is that what I'm understanding?
We're always exploring ways to actually do that, but a lot of it comes from enemy ability design. Yes, there's a lot to that. Yeah.
So Mike, you mentioned there being tools added to making it more effective in terms of the power scaling in melee, because you talked about SFX, VFX, all those things making it feel good. But there's a difference between the build feeling good and then being put into the game, and now it's being compared to builds that are clearing significantly faster, especially in the game that is incentivizing very heavily on favor farming, which means clear speed matters a lot. Minion build suffers from this as well in terms of clear efficiency. You mentioned there being abilities or introductions of tools with a toolkit for melee players to utilize to increase the efficiency. Is this something we see in season 2, and if so, what?
Specific examples for season 2, I don't have anything off the top of my head that I can share right now.
Okay.
I think it comes down to, I think a lot of it right now is going to be like small balance changes, and I say small that'll have big impacts. There's things like I don't have a good hard example of something we're actually doing, but as an example, something we could do hypothetically is like even just taking a second off the cooldown of something like lunge, or giving less pressure on an item slot that has increased cooldown recovery on it or something like that. Like there's little things we can do that either hit like a wide range of builds or not. So we can maybe have maybe there's like an item slot where like cooldown recovery exists, and there's another we put something else on there that's really good for like long range characters, and so they no longer want to get that cooldown recovery, so then their movement abilities are slower. So there's that, like sometimes it's like the pressure gets put on these abilities and the balance from like really far away sometimes even, and I don't think we're actually that far away from having melee feel really good to play in a broader sense. And I think that a lot of the changes that we're bringing to, especially things like volatile reversal and Forge Guard, the changes there is so huge, and we still got that to get into.
Yeah. Speaking of all speaking of all the cool things, GHAZZY, how hard would it be for you to just capture if I actually show my screen? I'm in a CT build right now, and I've been stripping
I'll make it work.
I have been stripping stuff so I don't leak anything crazy, but we could just show you some of the
start it up and I'll see if it screws it up and I'll fix it. I'll sort it.
Don't tell anyone else, okay?
It's just sure, we'll all be quiet. We're not gonna say anything. Yeah. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, because volatile reversal specifically is like it's a traversal ability that doesn't regard a target like lunge, and it doesn't regard shield like shield rush. I mean, sure, you can spec shield rush to not regard that, but it is a mobility skill for Sentinel, which is gonna help, and it has some other cool stuff now because we totally reworked what the reversal is. So yeah,
That's fair. If you turn off your camera and then start the stream, I think that'll actually add up perfectly.
Yeah, I mean we can try that.
Or just start the stream and I'll see if I can just add.
Yeah,
it on top.
let's see. What if I just do this first? Oh, beautiful sound.
I need to do this. I need to. Yeah, it's gonna screw it up completely. Let me just add that. Give me a sec.
You might want to just go full screen. I think maybe.
Yeah.
Probably easier. Yeah.
Moment. That's the wrong one. Window capture.
Quick before someone stops us.
Yeah, I had to like take all of my idols out so I don't, leak anything.
Okay, your screen is now full screen.
And then I had to replace some of my items to not to just be the base set items because you can Anyways, okay, so Volta Reversal is now a combo ability that first it jumps forward in time, and then when you use it again, it goes back, and it does some melee attack on both cases. I think I'm just gonna unspec this so I can show you the default. So the first, and then if I do second, it just slams backwards where I was. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and you can do some interesting stuff with it. For example, Devouring Orb has some cool new tech here, where you can consume all other orbs. So, do I actually have it here? So if I just cast Devouring Orb here, normally if you cast another one, it's just there, but now it consumes the other one, and it does more damage, and it's bigger as a result. So one of the cool things here is that you can bring them with you. With the and that means that you can like pile them up into like this one big pile of stuff, and then it does a lot more damage.
Yeah.
And there's other interesting stuff, like you can actually make it not be a traversal skill. It still has a cooldown, but then you can use other abilities if you want. And there's just a bunch of interesting stuff here. There's a so in the skill design, the base functionality, you have the first and the second one. So you have the ability to go back in time. So we can do stuff in that time period. For example, we can just provide you frenzy when you're between the first and the second. But if you want to, you can just remove the second combo altogether. So now you can actually just have it as a proper traversal skill that doesn't go backward ever.
And that removes the possibility of staying with the frenzies, for example.
Yes, because you no longer have the ability to go backwards.
Exactly.
So what I like a lot is, that's my little devouring orbs. I put them back, and then we'll just there's some cool stuff there. What else?
Yeah.
You have so many changes here. Oh yeah, Sigils of Hope is no longer sigils. It's now Symbols of Hope.
Symbols
for
of Hope.
some reason. Yeah. And we completely changed the base functionality of it. So previously, you had basically three ways, since we introduced the unique. But for the vast majority of the time of the skill was, you cast it, it costs a lot of mana, and you have a duration for the sigil that give you some buffs. So now they just automatically generate over time. And then when you actually use the button, you get a defensive buff. And it consumes them. And then you wait them to get again. So
okay.
You see here, I have 5. It shows 5 on the icon here because I used when I had 5, and now they just come back.
Start ramping up, yeah.
Yeah, and you can like influence how fast they come back. I think here. And there's some other changes in the skill tree here, but the skill tree, like the overlay here, looks pretty much the same. But there's been some changes. Like for example, the Divine Flare. I think you can kind of maybe even make it an actual build now. You remove the defensive part of it, but now you don't have to generate the sigils anymore to then use Divine Flare. Now they are just generated, and then you just use Divine Flare. instead. So it also saves you mana like that a lot. Other cool things. Vengeance, the first skill you get. I think the skill
Very
tree has
first.
changed a bit. Yeah, okay. So you can now convert it to Void, which is kind of cool.
Oh.
We got a nice little scaler here that gives you a Fistpen with your extra overcap physical resistance. And I think if you convert this also applies to the other ones. So if you convert it to fire, it goes to fire. If you convert it to void, I think you have fire conversion somewhere. Yeah, so you have that too. You can turn your iron blades that nobody really used before into forge weapons now. And the iron blades can also be kind of useful. And there's some other stuff like buffing your erasing strike here. You know, you're smashing your face against Abby with your vengeance to get your damage mitigation from vengeance, and then you know smack it with the erasing strike and do more damage.
Yeah, don't
What
let me
else?
stop you. Keep going.
What else? What else?
You can just hover over every node real quick.
Javelin.
For a few seconds.
Okay. Here's big. This is a big one. So previously in the past, when you combined Siege Barrage with Divine Fury, the Divine Fury, which is just adds like new, you know, the PoE, D2 Lightning Fury. When you hit something, it just throws more stuff. So previously, these two did not work together. Well, that's changed. So now it does work. So you can throw a lot of lightning with javelin now.
That looks amazing. Show me that one more time.
Good. Yeah.
For the people in the back needs to see that again.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
That's
so it helps a lot.
You can do
so now,
spear scaling with javelin is automatic, and as Forge Guard, you can now do spear with a shield.
I'm not sure if I want to open my passive trees for you here.
Yeah, right. That's a minefield.
There's a lot of changes in there. So maybe we'll save that for future. Multi-strike can now shotgun.
Great.
Yeah, it can shotgun now. So you have some really good single target with Bladestorm now, which is
that's beautiful.
It turned the skill into an actually really good skill now.
You're saying it was really bad, and now you actually made it good. Is that what you're saying?
it lacked on the single target. Like you couldn't invest into making it a really good for single target. You could do stuff like smite proc stuff like that, but now you can actually make the skill do really good damage on its own. What else?
Any forge?
So much
stuff?
I've got void.
I think both Forge Strike and Smelter Spat are just better, basically.
Better.
Ring of Shields, Ring of Shields. This node that nobody ever took. I think you might be able to do something with it because Ring of Shield is a minion skill. I don't think many people know that, but it's a minion skill, and it had this the fire damage for a time here, but nobody really used. But it might work now. We've done a lot of small changes around Judgment because one of the things with Volatile Reversal was that it was providing a lot of mana if you build it like that way. So there's the Judgment mana dump build that you had to use Volatile Reversal to get mana back. So we capped how much mana you can actually consume without nerfing the damage. So it doesn't empty your mana pool like crazy anymore, which is kind of nice. And also it just does more damage.
Well, that's a nice neat change. It's a lot of quality of life in that.
Yeah, Shield Throw no longer has a cooldown as a baseline, which is kind of cool. It still has it so that you can only throw a shield at a time. So if your shield is still, ping-ponging between enemies, you can't throw another one. Okay. Well, now with 1 point, you can also remove that. So you can't just throw them as much as you want. Previously, this node, I think, regarded going through a lot of points to even get there. And if you still want to play it with a cooldown, you can do that and do more damage. And then it also now can chain off you, so you can do more single target damage with it if you want. And you can combine it with you could just be like a hybrid of shield throw and then something else. Use it on the cooldown and whatnot instead of just spamming the one skill.
So this is part of the throwing niche that you're kind of setting into the Sentinel.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think Shield Bash just does more damage. Oh yeah, one thing that people have been asking for a long time is Rive with void conversion. You have that now.
Nice.
There's a lot of changes around here.
So a lot of people love spin to win. What are the changes for season 2 since we're opening up this can of worms? What's the changes to Warpath, if any?
I don't think there's too many changes on Warbot specifically. Some buffs here and there, I think, because Warbot is already good.
Yes.
Especially if you're playing that's a Void Knights with the echoes, and the masteries. I mean, just the changes to the passive trees are making it a lot better, regardless of how you play it, basically.
And you were not able to show the skill tree.
I'm probably already getting fired from showing this. Maybe I'll not get sued if I don't show them. But yeah, there's a lot of changes in the passive trees, and you'll definitely learn about them. So yeah.
Yeah, we're learning right now. Like, I'm not gonna stop you. Anything else you want to show us?
Maybe we just show the Heartseeker like this too. It's way cooler. Well, okay.
Yeah.
When I do this, I need to go check that I don't actually leak anything there. So I'm gonna close my screen now, and Mike can talk about Heartseeker while I set up my character. No, I'm gonna hide it from you.
Yeah, do that as well.
Just in case.
Are there? Oh, it's too late.
So 1 second. Let me hop onto a marksman real quick.
There we go. You're off screen as well. Everything's set fine.
I have a lot of DMs in my Slack.
I bet. Thank you, by the way.
It is fine.
You know, one of my follow-up questions was about Sigil of Hope to get you talking about it, but you covered that already, so we're good.
Oh yeah, I have idols here that I am not showing. Okay,
so maybe when you're checking that, maybe we can have Mike elaborate a little bit on the part you said, Carve, where you said that Forged Guards is better. So I'm guessing my question would be Forged Guard and Manifest Armor. Maybe Mike could spill some beans on what Carve was meaning when he said they're better.
I mean, so a lot of the stuff with Forged Guard mechanically, we were actually pretty happy with where it's sitting and feeling, and but because it did lose some damage numbers from Volatile Reversal, we have buffed up some. There's some like, hey, this number's higher, this number's bigger. So there's not a lot of like huge mechanical changes other than the one huge passive node that has a lot of implications around around the basically every ability that it has.
The big thing for Forged Guard, it's the two-hander and a shield.
Yeah,
it allows you to do some cool things.
One thing that you couldn't take the Manifest Armor node where it gave it a sword, like a weapon and a shield, that you can only ever use a one-handed weapon with that. Now you can use a two-handed weapon. You can have your Manifest Armor clone a two-handed weapon and a shield at the same time. So like, yeah, there's a Manifest Armor buff right there from that node. So a lot of these like knock-on effects and things where like if you're doing like forged weapons and you're trying to use like shield scaling stuff at the same time, it wasn't really viable because you wanted to have a two-handed weapon for manifest weapon spawning. So there's that node has such huge implications and ripples across all of Forged Guard that it's like there wasn't a lot that needed to change without having it touch basically every tree. And at the same time, we did bump up some numbers as well.
That's fair.
And at least two uniques that we made for this patch had to be slightly looked again because Forged Guards don't exist now. So yeah.
So one of the questions I had as a follow-up for the Forged Guard minion specifically with manifested forged weapons is that it feels very one-dimensional on the terms of the aspect of playing minion builds with Forged Guard mastery as a whole. So I guess the question I have, if there are any plans, whether they're for patch 1.2 or beyond, that will see Forged Guard minion play properly utilize the minions in a way that is more comparable to other masteries that also uses minions such as the Acolytes.
Yeah, so. We really want to keep the minion the gameplay feel of minions to be unique and distinct from class to class. So like the really easy ones to talk about is companions versus like Primalist companions versus Necromancer minions. Yeah. And there's a really obvious difference the way we approach those. The companions can be revived. You have far fewer of them. The Necromancer minions are designed to be sacrificed literally with the ability to sacrifice. And so like that's really easy to look at them differently. And then the Forge Guard minions, it's a tricky thing to nail down an identity for it, and we kind of look at them almost like an extension of the character a little bit, and because they're so heavily tied to your gear. And because they're so heavily tied to your gear, the one thing people expect from them is them to actually mimic the unique effects that your gear has. And I think that's the key missing mechanical piece for forged weapons, which they still will not do in season 2. I'm sorry. But we are looking to extract some of the essence out of those unique items that you want to capture for future stuff down the road.
Yeah,
Fair
and just a random note. So there's this new ring that we added. I think it was in 1.1, maybe.
Phantom Grip?
Yes, Phantom Grip that had some interesting bug on it. And since we fixed that bug, we just gave a flat, really big buff, both damage and defense to forged weapons. So if you were one of those people who were having like really crazy setup with the ring in the bug form, you probably got nerfed a bit. But for everyone else, forged weapons are better. Like
Fair
if you
enough.
didn't have like crazy setup abusing the bug, your forged weapon should be better this patch.
So
Okay,
you-
also I'm ready. I'm in Heartseeker right now. If you
All right,
time.
let me know when the stream's up, and I'll put it up back up.
It is up.
Give me a second. You're full screen and ready to go.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting skill. Okay, so skill itself, the base functionality is as simply as you shoot an arrow to a target. It ignores everything on its way to whatever you were aiming, and then it hits that, and then it has a chance to hit it again. So basically, it goes through it, comes back and hits again. And one of the key mechanics of this is to increase the recurve chance, so you can hit the same target with one use of the ability many times. So if you guys remember Guided Arrow from D2, in its glory, when it was able to pierce and hit the target multiple times, we basically just did that and added the skill tree.
Okay.
There's a very long, interesting discussion and a lot of design portion of this. One being how do we do the chance to hit the target multiple times? So in D2, you just have a pierce chance, right? And each percentage that you get is just way better than the previous. So if you go from 50% to 75% chance, and then you go from 75 to 100% chance, it's so much more powerful. So we didn't want to have this where it just every single point gets crazy good for multiple reasons. It makes it harder for us to provide a chance in gear and whatnot, because we have to be very careful to not allow you to hit like over 95% chance. We want there to be some volatility so that it's not always hitting 5 times every single time, or 6 times, or 7 times, or whatever. So we couldn't really go with a you have, the first one, like every single time you just pierce once, and then you invest into another pierce chance or stuff like that. So what we ended up being is every single time it successfully recurves, the next one, the chance is just multiplied by a number that keeps going down. So if you start with, I wonder if we have an example here. So let's say that you have 200% chance. You're guaranteed on the first to hit again. And then that 200% chance gets multiplied by 0.8.
So
I'm not going to do math on stream here. Sorry.
160.
Yeah.
1.6.
So you just keep going down until eventually it's no longer a guaranteed chance. And now you run into this point where you have this chance to get like a really nice chain of getting multiple hits, or it just fails. So that's where the volatility comes from. Okay. And then we did a lot of cool stuff on the skill tree. But before I go there, do you have any questions on that?
No, I think that sounds like a really cool way to create that volatility without it feeling bad. I like that.
Yeah, we did a lot of math and simulations, and just probably somebody could go dig it up from some of our chats. But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, maybe show it in action a little bit once you're.
Yeah. Okay. So I have. Oh yeah, this is a base skill only, so I don't have much, but it's all. I have some gear that
That's
keeps
cool.
me. So it's just, you know, it goes through the enemy and goes back and it hits again.
That's nice.
So one of the main reasons for this skill is that we didn't have like a strong like a single target, like a physical based skill. We have the detonating arrow. We can't convert it to physical. So basically the only physical abilities are just flurry, puncture, and the multi-shot. And you can make multi-shot into a single target ability, but it's not really a single target ability by base. So that's what the Heartseeker is by its like basic design doing.
All right.
You can clear with it. For example, if you take this node, so we were talking about the chances on how many times it goes through an enemy. So we actually pre-calculate this. So if you kill an enemy and you have this node, for every additional chance it would hit the enemy, the additional time it would hit the enemy, instead puncture comes out. So if you, let's say that you had 10 hits and you just one-shot the enemy on the first hit, you get 10 punctures just flying around to other enemies. So that's kind of that's basically the only node inside the skill tree itself that builds like AoE.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess another thing about the basic functionality: if the target dies, it will just find a new target to hit with the remaining recurves. I think that's really important. So it doesn't just like vanish. It'll seek another one to do damage to.
And this is screen wide, or
You can shoot it.
It's
No,
a
I'm
very
thinking, like
large
the
range.
recurve retargeting.
Yeah, the retargeting is very long range.
Okay.
It'll just keep hitting the same target, and then
Like,
if
if
it
the
dies, I
target
think
dies,
the
you find a new
retargeting
one?
it's probably like half a screen or something. I don't remember exactly how far, but it's pretty far. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we could probably go find out by going into an area with some normal monsters that die. Then I can actually show this or two. But yeah, some other stuff. So obviously we have some just base, recurve chance. And then we talk about the volatility. So this is a cool node because this just sets it so that it'll never go below 66%. So this allows it to potentially go for some crazy amount of hits.
Yeah.
And then obviously we had to put a deck scaler there. So stack decks and you get more recurve chance. We got cold conversion, and we mentioned about the frostbite. So there's some frostbite support on Rogue there. You can convert it to fire, obviously. We have decent amount of bleed and poison support. Like for example, here you can convert your armor shred into poison chance. It kind of reminds of, I think Runemaster has armor shred to frostbite chance.
So yeah.
We got that there. Yeah, obviously we have the crit hit based stuff here, and then you can combine these. So you can go gold crit, you can go fire crit if you wanted to. For example, Dragon Song with the crits, or you could do Rhino Winter. As you can see, they're proccing there. They're proccing a lot.
They're proccing a lot, yeah.
You can do some fun stuff here. You can make it into mana generator. Because the base mana cost. Oh, I have a bow that reduces my mana cost.
I'm so excited for this skill.
Yeah, it has a pretty low base mana cost. Obviously, you can increase it with some of the passives that Rogue has, but you can just also turn it into a mana scaler. There's some cool stuff here. You can change how the. Oh, I should probably put bow back on. As you can see how the
visual pattern.
Yeah, it changes the visual here because this was another thing we debated a lot. Is how should it look like when it recurves back? Because this looks really cool when it goes like that, but not everyone liked it. So that's why we just put it into a node instead. And it has a slow chance there, so it's not entirely just for the theme, but yeah.
All right.
I really want to show you this, so let me.
yeah, knock yourself out. I mean, it's fun. We got a handful of more questions before we're done. Just take your time. Don't worry about it.
We got time.
Yeah, we got plenty of time. Go for it.
Just want to
New
show you
waypoint there.
the page function right there.
The
Yeah.
leak.
Oh, I should probably do.
Specialized puncture too, even.
I don't need to do that. But so you see, some punctures are flying off here.
Christ.
Obviously, this is pretty weak enemies, so but this is a way to build it.
Oh my god.
And then I guess another cool thing, there's a unique quiver that I don't currently have here that converts puncture to cold currently in the game. What it does not do currently, it doesn't convert the bleed chance from the bloodthirst to frostbite, but it does in season 2. So you can do a frostbite puncture plus Heartseeker stuff if you want.
Feels good.
So how are you gonna
I
make
should show how the conversion here.
how are we gonna make other builds compete with this type of clear speed?
Well, I mean, to be fair, we are in like the lowest.
So here's the cold converted one.
Oh, so when you don't have a target to hit, it's just gonna bounce back and forth where you aimed.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could actually stack up a bunch of arrows before a boss becomes attackable.
Yeah, and then there's a fire.
That looks
You can also-
fantastic.
Yeah, you can also turn this into a throwing ability. You actually show that on the trailer. It comes from a unique that I don't currently have.
It's a triggered throwing ability at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. So you don't actually throw it yourself. It
Oh.
just comes from the unique. But you have some interesting support here for throwing and spell builds. For example, the Dragon Zone that I was showing earlier. And this is interesting because this scales with how many times you recurve. So there's a reason for you to stack the recurve as much as you can, because you just want the buff to go as high as you want, right?
Yeah.
And it also keeps throwing. So this is where you could also use this as support kill for some throwing marksman build, maybe that those exist as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff in Heartseeker.
And it is
really
important
excited
to
for
note
this.
that this is a marksman specific ability. You cannot use this
Yes.
on Falconer or Blade Dancer.
Yes, this is only for marksman. Yep.
So it's past the chain, basically, is what you're saying.
I think it's a 30 point.
It's 30 points,
I would look at the game, but then I would show the skill tree, and
Yeah, you don't
I
do
don't
that
want
now.
to.
It's all good. I
I
did
don't
have
think there's a lot of
question.
changes for the passives on marksman though, but yeah, it's locked to marksman.
Let's not get you sued. We appreciate the showcase. I did have a question though regarding like extra skills past the chain, right? We know there's one lacking for the Lich, and we know there was one missing for the Paladin. Is that still the case for season 2?
Yes, the only brand new ability for season 2 is Heartseeker, and it's a doozy. There's Volatile Reversal is essentially a new skill because it's so heavily reworked. But yeah, the only new one is Heartseeker. We are still looking to I know what the we as a team, we know what the I love this build. Sorry, getting distracted by card playing.
It looks beautiful.
We know what the abilities that are going to go in those slots are going to be, and we have started working on some of those new abilities for future updates.
That sounds amazing. I mean, right now we have like this electrical theme going on for the Paladin specifically. Would it be a far stretch to seize another type of minion archetype for that? I'd have to ask. I'm sorry, it's just me.
I think we're going to be leaning more into the Holy Warrior side of the character than the minion side, because we want to keep minions more a focus on Forge Guard than on Paladin. So I think that's unlikely.
Okay.
The ability's not made yet. What happens in development room?
Yeah, I got some ideas. Just hit me up.
Yeah, I think it's time to for me to close this, to not keep Mike distracted. Sorry, my bad.
All good.
So yeah, I'll close the stream.
Let me get that out. Let's do it this way. There we go. We're back on track. Let me get this.
But you got some more questions? I heard.
No, that kind of covers that part. On the topic of minions, though, I do have a couple of mini questions lined up, so it's a pretty good segue into that one. Especially after seeing the Heartseeker as having clear speed is obviously going to be depending on, the difficulty and the damage output you can do, of course, but the area coverage is clearly very, very vast. And this weaves back both to the melee question we talked about earlier, but also specifically melee minions. And the first question I have on the minion parts is actually Minion AI can feel, or very often feel, a bit frustrating. So my question is if there are any plans in making them more aggressive to begin with.
Yeah, so every minion right now is its own entity, its own thing. It thinks for itself. There's no hive mind effect happening here, and I think that in there's a few ways we can tackle making minions more efficient at like target acquisition and all that sort of stuff. And it's I think we don't have a ton of changes for season 2 coming for this. I think there's a few things that are getting added in specifically as far as like items and new balancing things that are gonna make them stronger. But there's behavioral wise, we don't have any big changes yet for those. I really want to do that minion stances thing we've talked about a few times. So players can be like, I want mine to be more aggressive. We have tried turning up the aggressiveness of minions a few times, and it doesn't always work the way you want it to work, especially with how minions, I guess, with the way their AI works in general. The other approach is making a hive mind of some sort, where something was like, okay, well, I've got 8 minions and there's 8 targets. I'm going to send 1 minion to every target type thing. Right now, and that naturally happens a little bit if the enemies are spread out, but if all the minions are the same distance, have the same closest target, they'll all focus that first target right away. And so yeah, we are really happy with the ability to target to force targets on with the A key by default. You can be like, okay, attack this target, and that does work really well. But we know a lot of people don't want to do that or need to do that, and sometimes it's nicer if they do spread out and attack multiple targets, and that doesn't allow you to be like, okay, spread out and attack multiple targets at once, because that's that coverage that you're talking about. So this is something that we are looking at still, but it's not something we have big sweeping changes for in season 2.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Like I can continue a bit. So
Yeah.
I think one thing, there's a couple cool things. Like Dreadshade now is permanent, so that's gonna help your acolyte summoners a bit.
Okay.
And then you know how you have a crazy amount of like movement speed for some minions, and they start sliding and skating.
Yeah.
There should be some improvements to that, so they don't just like slide right across the enemies that they were supposed to stop to hit. Hopefully. What else? Mana costs on some of the acolyte, I think, skills are lowered a bit. Like for example, Volatile Zombie. The bear, the summon bear on Primalist, we're reducing the cooldown on the swipe a lot, and then we are giving it a like strength scaler, so the bear just gets additional melee damage from strength. I think it's like 1 per 3 strength or something like that. So it's strength stacking Primalist. The bear might.
I'm really excited to see what someone does with Pebble set.
Yeah. Let's not leak all the set changes here, but yeah. The Pebble sets might be pretty good there. Yeah.
So there's some set changes happening as well here.
There are some Sabertooth fixes coming too. They now swipe every time they leap, not just when they use their own ability to leap.
There was some bug with Sabertooth that was fixed, and then we gave it a couple new nodes, I think. Yeah. So it's actually pretty good now, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So I was still doing the rounds as I explained earlier, talking to some creators that mainly make content for last Epoch, and obviously I have some mini questions which I kind of baked in. But one question that myself was very interested in hearing was also coming from Action RPG Aaron as well as Dreadful, and it's a 2-question part. So I'm going to start with one of them, and that is that the weaving back to melee issue, and that is that they feel lackluster for melee minions as well, that they feel lackluster in terms of clearing compared to range because of area coverage. And so I guess one of the big questions there is there going to be improvements on melee minions to allow them to hit a wider target with their attacks? Like basically, will they have bigger AoEs? Is what I'm asking.
I don't think we have any specific changes to that. I think the bigger problem for melee minions would be just like how easily can they like engage with the new pack of enemies. Like they don't have the run there, so maybe giving them some dashes on stuff like that is gonna help a lot. But like I don't think there's almost like any skill in the entire game like a melee skill that is just like a actual single target. They all have like a small AoE. So as long as the enemies are close to each other, it does help.
Okay.
There are the little changes that we mentioned just a second ago with Bear getting swipe and Sabretooth getting better. The Fury swipes happening more often with its leap engagement. And so yeah, there are some little things, but there's not like a huge systematic change to like all melee minions getting more AoE or something like that.
Yeah, we also just have, like Meg said, all the minions, like they're their own thing, and we have a lot of them. We'll every now and then we'll find things to buff. So yeah, let us know what needs to be buffed, and we'll buff them in the future. So yeah,
I got you. Another part of this question there is was talking to these creators as well, which I'm curious about as well, is build diversity when it comes to minions. Now we have the unique playstyle of Forge Guard with their type of specific minions. If you look at the Acolyte, for example, due to the strength scaling and power of the double shade play, Infernal and Dread Shade, we're now getting permanent Dread Shade. That sounds fantastic. But due to the power scaling of those, it's been very often more favorable to put them all, stacking all the power onto one minion, like an Archmage or an Abomination, more so than actually having an actual army playing for you in terms of actual performance. So I guess the question for season 2 or beyond, are there any intentions in addressing the diversity problem of actual in-game performance of minion builds with that in mind?
I remember at least a couple minion builds that were army builds, and they were absolutely crazy, and we had to nerf them multiple times because they were so crazy. So that it's
Like the Wraiths?
it's a very fine line that needs to be walked, especially for something like you have a minion that does everything for you, and you just run around and they just do everything for you. So yeah, it's it is. We don't have any. It's like we are not targeting specifically so that single minion builds are better than the others. It just when people min-max complicated game, something is always better, and sometimes it's single minion builds.
I mean,
it
the
hasn't
Battlezed's
always
gonna
been the
help a lot.
case. Yeah,
Fair
it
enough,
hasn't
fair
always
enough.
been the case.
I have,
So I would expect that eventually there'll be a minion army build that's gonna be crazy good again, and then we have to nerf it. So yeah.
And this is not what we're seeing in season 2. That might be something we'll talk about in the future
Yeah,
season.
I don't think
Okay.
we have. Balance changes and itemization changes might make that the thing. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. I
We
do
don't have
have
any crazy changes to minions, specifically targeting minion army builds to be better.
okay.
Would be the answer. Yeah.
I do have one last mini question. I don't want to take the interview up with too many mini questions. I know it's me. I have to ask some of them. So the last mini questions I have specific for minions at least is Golem specifically. It feels more like a consistent utility option for minions builds rather than having a performing option as an actual offensive addition to a minion build. I believe this is from Frozen Sentinel actually. And that said, will we see some specific changes to minions in general for the season, which you already covered? But in this case, we're talking about the Golem. One of the best references I have for this is the Pyre node that the Golem has, which consumes minions to do fire damage. Like it charges up, it's taking all of these minions and consuming them only to light the little tiny match and hope that does damage. Like, what's up with that?
So that specific node, I don't think there's any changes coming.
Okay.
But yeah, these are just where we have so many nodes in so many skills that some need more love. That's it. We just need to get the feedback, and we need a couple more devs to just hire some devs for us to fix skills and buff them. You just need it takes a lot of time because you could just make number go big and then things die, right? That you could make a Vengeance literally one-shot the entire game with a single thing, but we generally want to be a bit more involved with the buffs and changes so that it isn't just a number go big kind of thing.
Of course. I like that approach, and I think that you especially seeing the Heartseeker, it seems like that's really the theme of it, to have more interesting mechanics and options to play with, so it's not just big number go up, right? I think that's a really good approach. Stepping aside away from minions, for the most part, not entirely. In the trailer, there was images showing. One of them showed a lot of new unique items, and it was really cool. But there was one in particular that stood out for myself and a lot of people in my chat, and we talked about this. And it is Nest of Nightmares. Now, we don't get to see much of it, but what we see in the teaser is a line of text saying, applying spiders on melee hits. Now, there's a wording in the game that says summon this, summon that, like the bee gloves and stuff like that. So we've already come to the conclusion this is not a minion stuff. But we really want to know, what is applying spiders on melee hits? Could you elaborate on this?
Yes, I can tell you exactly what the Ailment Spiders does. So Spiders
go.
is a new ailment.
Okay.
It lasts 4 seconds and can stack up to 4 times. It gives the afflicted actor 5% flat added chance to be critically hit per stack. So it is 5, 10, 15, 20% chance added to be crit.
So yeah, so basically,
if you've got 4 stacks of spiders on something, you only need to hit 80% crit to always crit.
Does this stack with acid skin?
This is just its own added Fenny on top of whatever else they might have.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, I like the sound of this. That's good.
And because it's applied to the target, it does affect other people hitting it as well. So like, if your minions hit it, they get that as well. If other people in your party hit it, they get that as well. So it's everything hitting the target.
All right. Another question we have is idol crafting. We talked about idols before. You're removing the flat HP from the stout idols?
Yeah,
that's only on stout? Does this include the big idols?
Only, yeah.
So the big idols that can have double life.
I think there's only one big idol that can have double life, and that's on Acolyte, I think.
It might be.
And there's a lot more pressure from other
think.
stuff now that you won't want it as much.
Yeah. I think it's one of the 3 Ps. I think that might still exist.
Okay. So the Season 2 is introducing Weaver's Touch craftable idols with 4 modifiers rather than 2. So I guess the question here is if you could share some information on what type of modifiers we can expect from this item slot, or are we going to sit and expect us to go for trying to Weaver's Touch our way into double life and armor and a rest roll, or is there any just more offensive scaling? Could you elaborate more on the modifiers we will see on these?
Yeah, I don't think we can do specific. I don't have a list of specific ones here, but yeah, there'll be more interesting things rather than just like flat stats quite so much. So you'll start to see. I don't know if I'm allowed to say specific ones or not.
Are we
that's why I took them out from my inventory when I was looking at.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, are we talking more offensive, mechanically changing modifiers, or are there also including like baseline stats such as life, resistance, armor, stuff like that? I guess that's a better question.
It's a mixture of both for sure.
Okay.
The ones that do call out specific skills I don't think they ever call out like offensive clearing skills as specific ones. So it's like there's if a idle enchantment does ever call out a specific skill, I think it only ever calls out defensive skills or utility skills, and then they can call out specific classes, like one of them's like something for fire skills,
Okay.
you know, things like that. So the categories of abilities that it'll do sometimes.
I think the important takeaway about the idle things is that there's new power in idols that did not exist there before. I think that's
hence the curiosity.
Yeah.
That said, though, when you say that the flat life and stout idols were removed, the follow-up question are there any improvements coming to the baseline idols that exist in the game now that we are not going to see double life stout idols? So are there any other changes happening to the baseline idols besides that?
There is new power in idols that you haven't seen before.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's not just the
those are
Weaver's
new-
Touch. That's how I understood it. So this is baseline. All of them gets new added modifiers that can roll.
Specifically, the size 1 and 2 idols. There's a bunch of new ones for that.
Okay. Perfect. Next question we have is champion modifiers coming to the game, and we have 0 information of what type of modifiers they can be. Can we get some knowledge on this?
Are you sure it's 0? I'm pretty sure I saw some of the trailer. I think.
Yeah,
I think
it's very minimal. It's borderlining 0 then.
Those ones are generally more specific for they'll call out individual abilities really frequently. So those ones are they're frequently more specific and narrow and niche things that you're going to be getting out of those. So those are designed to be more specific.
Yeah,
Right.
I think the important bit here is that they are always sealed, which means that you cannot put any of the champion affixes into legendaries. That's the you can make set items with them because you can just craft the set affix in there, but you cannot make a champion affix into a legendary.
So a lot of people have been having a different takes on this with which modifier was sealed. So champion modifiers are sealed, so they cannot go on unique items. Set item craft shards can become an actual prefix or suffix modifier on the item and affix. But so the set item can be put on a unique. My understanding was that was not possible. Okay.
Those
So
are
when
also
set
not
item-
going to be able to put there. Yeah.
Okay.
When a set shard gets applied to an item, that item becomes effectively a set item.
Okay.
And set items cannot be combined with unique items to make a legendary.
Good. Then we got that cleared for everyone because so many people have had different takes on this. And I'm like, Mike said it's not possible. But what about the sealed affix? I'm pretty sure that was champion modifiers. Let's just get that out of the way so we have that clearly stated here in the interview. Perfect. We are running really tight on time right now, but one last question before I want to jump into some Q&A. You can tag Mike, sorry, not Mike, but Wick or Photon in the chat here if you have any questions. He'll pick them out. He's already spammed me up on Discord with some questions. But before the Q&A, we have a question from yet another Last Epoch creator. His name is Frozen Sentinel. I call him the spreadsheet god at this point. And his question was, with more items and item types being introduced, how is balanced approach being approached when it comes to Merchant Guild versus Circle of Fortune?
Well, specifically, if talking about so this is like an additional layer to the itemization hunt. So I think most of the Weaver tree stuff should work with Circle of Fortune, so that you'd still have that's extra multiplier there. So it's not suddenly that everyone plays MG because there's no reason to play COF anymore.
And there's some stuff in the Weaver tree that we'll get into another time that you can influence the item types you're getting a little bit better. And the COF does scale off of that as well. So they play off each other and it gets amplified as a COF player.
Okay. So we know we have some new glyphs and runes. For example, the whole shifting the modifier tiers on the tiers on the modifiers can shift, right? Is this something we'll see not constellations, but prophecies for in Circle of Fortune? Is that something we can expect to see moving forward in Season 2?
Or getting the new runes, the new crafting materials?
One of the new ruins will have a prophecy, yes. But COF...
I'm sorry, my headset died.
But Merchant's Guild doesn't... You can't trade... You can't buy and sell those things on Merchant's Guild anyways. But yeah, COF does get a little bit of a boost of one of them.
Is GHAZZY back? Is this
now I can hear you. Now? I didn't hear shit there. Can you say that one more time?
You chat here? Because that's all that matters.
I think so. Did I miss it? I think I missed it all. They're saying poggers.
We can watch it later.
Yeah, you were asking about the prophecies. So one of the 3 new runes will have a prophecy.
Yeah.
I think it's rune of weaving. But the rest will, the COF players will get more of those through just the COF perks and the other prophecies. Like if you have a rune prophecy, that could potentially give you the other new runes. But there isn't a specific targeted prophecy for Havoc or Redemption.
All right. Since we're running a little low in time, I'm just going to dive straight into the Q&A. Again, you could type at EHG_Wick or _Photon for any questions. He's picking them out. So I'm just going to go from the list he sent me here. He's been picking the questions out. And the first one is, how do you plan to handle patches/bug fixes with the new cycle?
Season.
In the new season.
Yeah, we're like... I don't understand. Like, handle them. We're roll them out as soon as we can.
Hot fixes. Yeah.
Yep.
Hot fixes.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry. They're broken. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it's Q&A. Yeah. We'll do some rapid fire with them.
Push them out fast and furious.
Yes, for family. So the next one is about family. It's with minions falling further and further behind in the overall state of balance. Is there plan changes in the upcoming release to help those archetypes out?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so much being shaken up by item changes coming this season that it's going to be. I wouldn't bring any preconceived notions like that into the new season.
All right. Are the time rot nodes additive or multiplicative with each other?
They are all 3 different multipliers. If you're talking about the rot creep, that
Yes,
provides
but
more
within
damage.
itself, right? With itself.
Yeah, they're all multiplicative with each other.
Yeah, the time rot chance is its own like a bucket of
Yeah.
a multiplier, and then the other 2 are also. So you get 3 different multipliers there.
All right. Will arena prophecies still appear if you have removed arenas with the new Weaver tree node?
I don't know.
The answer is yes.
I think so.
Yeah, but you can just block arena prophecies. I think there's a new lens coming in season 2 that should make your life a bit easier.
Okay. Next one is I feel like for ARPGs, the history is better told through end of chapter cutscenes. Any plans on expanding that front?
I know we've talked about having better cutscenes in the game, and that's something that people have been pushing for a lot. Me amongst them for sure. I think that those are improved cutscenes. Yeah, storytelling. It's a huge way. We've been talking about this for years about how like you can get the story from like Diablo 2 by just watching the cutscenes for the most part, and there's not that many cutscenes there. And you know, like I think adding in those would be really hugely beneficial. We don't have any major ones expansion because there are those little cutscenes we do have for them, which are great. But yeah, getting more, I'd love to have more. And as we add more chapters.
All right. So here's another question, which is from Mike. It's a bit personal. I was very curious about this. I even wrote to Photon about this, saying, "What happened to Mike? Like, is this good or is it bad? I don't know what is happening." And the question is, when are you releasing the workout routine and diet plan? You look amazing. You've lost a lot of weight. You look fantastic. And I was like, what is happening? I don't even know how to answer it or ask it. But here's the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is all good. It is it is a lot of hard work and eating less and working more.
Eating less.
Working out more. It is there's no secret to it. You gotta calculate how many calories you need to maintain your body weight and eat less than that and track them rigorously. And that's literally all I did.
All right. It's definitely paying off.
Thank you. Yeah, feels good. Just got the home gym set up.
Nice.
Next door and starting to get into that pretty hard, which is great.
Perfect. Next question is, can we be able to trade mats?
We are not. You're not able to trade mats, and that's not something we're currently looking at doing. It's possible we could in the future, but right now it is nothing. No trading on mats.
Yeah, this is the one thing that we mentioned earlier is that it would require very major changes to how item factions currently work.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Any improvement / changes to localization coming?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
We
want the localization to be good. Yeah. So yeah, it's always.
We either just expanded it or are expanding the languages.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's out yet or not.
All right.
There's a lot of languages now.
Fair enough. Will we be able to control somehow the Weaver's tablets via the COF Observatory prophecies?
There is nothing specifically interacting between COF and like the Weaver stuff like that. There are things that naturally just work together, but there isn't a very specific interaction like that now.
Yeah, so if you have something in COF that says like you just get more of this thing, and then the Weaver stuff drops that thing, you get more of that thing from dropping it.
All right. What about making it easier to actually pick up items from the floor without having to click precisely on it?
UI scaling's coming, so you'll be able to make them bigger if you'd like to be able to have a bigger target to click.
Nice. So that's just loot filter improvements. Is that my understanding of it?
No, like we're scaling the entire UI options now, so you can crank the size of everything, the whole UI up or down. Yeah.
Player agency again. I've said this before. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think here's also like a pickup radius, or like how far away you can click to pick up items to not run to it. I don't remember if we have any changes to that. It is something we discussed at some point, and I think it was overall just yes, we should do it. I don't remember if we did it.
It's one of
So many
those.
little things like that.
I guess we're gonna bring it up now and see if we can. If we didn't, maybe we can.
All right.
I don't know.
That's good. I mean, that's also one of those. You can only make it bigger. You can never go back once you made it bigger. So it's a very touchy topic, right? Next question is plans for seasonal objectives.
That's
Yes,
something
but
we're
not
very
season 2.
interested in down the road. Season 2 does not have seasonal objectives with like the whole thing. I think there are lots of great examples of that where there's like complete these bosses and finish this challenge in game, and you get this like cosmetic thing for the season to remember to like so you can remember having completed that challenge in the game. You look back at that season. These are all awesome stuff. You get achievements. We're interested in diving into that world. We don't have them for season 2 yet.
We have invested time into making the game better instead of keeping you playing more from giving you free MTX. Basically, is friendly. It is something that we definitely want to do. They're really cool. We just have other priorities being on the game right now.
That's fair. Is the Uber Aberoth fight accessed through the same method as the normal one?
No, kind of. You need to kill a normal Aberoth to get to Uber Aberoth. It drops a Woven Echo that you put into your Echo Web if you have a high enough corruption on it, and then you'll fight Uber Aberoth. And important to note is that even though it is in the Echo Web, modifiers or corruption does not affect the difficulty of that. It's a static fight, and you will have access to it way before than your character is ready to fight it.
Yes. So similar to the Aberoth. All right.
Yes. It is a lot harder fight than normal Aberoth.
So a good follow-up question to this is actually what corruption is the Uberoth balance around, and what do you expect players to be at when they can clear him?
Can we tell you when you can like access it? Is that something we can say? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we can say when you're able to access it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 500 corruption.
500. And that is
you need minimum 500 to access it. But even if you're able to farm 500, it's going to be a very
difficult fight. Yes.
Fight. All right, so you should be significantly higher for it to be a comfortable fight, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the interesting bit is that once you put it into your Echo Web, if you fail, you can just you can go again.
That's
there
nice,
there might be some stuff like maybe not giving you the loot. I'm not sure, but we probably do need to do something there. But yeah, you can just keep fighting it.
Okay. Next question is, can Woven Echo's items change the corruption of the echo it is applied to somehow?
There is one Woven Echo that does change the corruption of that timeline. We already talked about that one.
Yeah, the one that copies the highest corruption of that player. Yeah. So that's the only one so far that is fitting this question.
There might be one more.
I don't think there's any Woven Echo that changed the corruption of the echo. No, because the corruption is the corruption is based on the timeline. So whatever the timeline's corruption is, the corruption is for the echoes.
Okay. Following this up, we have, can there be more sinks for rare materials?
Oh, sinks, yes. I mean the. Well, one of the rare materials is going away, and the new ones that are there are, I think you're going to be wanting to use them up on your items, because I think you're going to get more opportunities to craft good items, because there's going to be more base types that are potentially awesome because these new crafting materials are available for you. So I think, just the existence of them is going to make you use more of them.
Okay, fair enough. Can you guys talk about how much better arenas are now? If at all. Sorry, I had to add that.
Go
Yeah, you can influence them through the Weaver tree. I mean, one is you can just not do them at all, but you can also just add some other stuff to it. And the base functionality of it is also, I think the enemies are faster. I think they come to you much faster if you stand in the middle. I think.
The time between waves, I think, is reduced as well.
Yeah. We did a bunch of like small adjustments to it.
Okay.
I've heard that at least few people say that who hated them say that they're kind of fine now. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's a good sign for me. I was never a big fan of them, so I'll have to
And there's,
try them
there's
out.
more mechanics, like of the like the side mechanics and things that spawn in them now as well.
All right.
I
Next
think previously
question.
there was like no way that any of the extra mechanics could appear in them, but I think at least champions can now.
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of big though.
I think.
If it's true, since you said think.
Yeah. I'm like 80% sure on that one.
Okay. Next question is: can you guys talk about? No, sorry. Are portal charms consumables?
Yes.
I believe you guys covered this in the last interview.
Yes,
Yeah,
and it's good refresher is that you can trade any of the 3 existing dungeon keys in Magelka in Divine Era. I think there's a NPC there that you can trade up those keys for portal charms. So
Portal one.
let's say if you only care about Temporal Sanctum, but you have a lot of the other 2, you can just trade them up for the portal charms.
All right. Is the damage taken increase from dual wield being changed?
I don't think
No.
so.
No.
This is a very interesting, like both the designing and balancing topic, because it's like, okay, do we want dual wielding to be like, so we have a sword and board, then we have like 2-handing, and then we have dual wield. Where should the dual wield fall in like that in the middle? Like, should it be doing the most damage? Should it be doing more damage than a sword and board, but be slightly tankier than with a shield or with a 2-hander? And I think we fell on that it should just take more damage, but you're in most cases doing more damage.
Fair enough. Are Forge Guard minions robots? I have no idea what that means. That was the question I got.
Yes.
And no.
Okay. Yes and no.
They have feelings.
I
They
think
have
I can make a robot out of Lego. Come
My
on.
manifest armor has feelings. Okay.
I mean, that's coming from a true summoner perspective. I didn't know you were a real summoner, Carve. What
do
has
you mean?
changed? I mean,
I've been a summoner player since forever. What do you mean?
well, not always. Not always. We've seen how happy you were playing Heartseeker. I'm just saying. There we go.
Yeah.
Speaking of Heartseeker, what level is it to learn Heartseeker? It was past the chains. How many points in? 20 for the base class, and then how many points in for the marksman?
30.
I think it's 30. I
So-
can take a look. I can
I'm pretty sure,
confirm.
I'm pretty sure it's 30.
Okay, so around level 50 skill points
Yes.
in, which means
Regards 30. Yes.
yeah,
correct.
so the level then would be depending on how many skill points you got from the campaign, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of summarizes the Q&A. Before the little outro, I have 2 more things to cover there in the outro. I'm curious, Mr. Minion Lover, what are you playing as your starter for Season 2 yourself?
Ooh, I don't know.
It has to be Minions now, I'm just saying.
I mean, does Falcon count? I could play a bow falconer. I don't know. Who knows?
Falcon
No,
does
I'm
not
not
count. No.
Okay. I think
Bow.
I'm gonna play either. I'm gonna play Heartseeker or I'm gonna play something Sentinel, Void Knight, probably.
Boy, no. What about you, Mike?
I'm on it.
I've been saying this for months now. I'm going full Heartseeker. There's no question in my mind. It is my favorite class has always been Marksman, and it's the first time we've had a new skill for it since it launched. It is Marksman for me. I'm playing Heartseeker.
Fair enough. So the last question before the outro, we're going to wrap this up, is obviously the common question that we've seen on Twitter when we talk about Bex many years ago. You all know what it is, and that is patch notes when?
When they're ready.
Just don't give us a patch note 3 days before launch. So give us at least a week.
You will have several days to read through all of the changes for sure. But I don't know. I don't think we can give you the actual dates.
We asked. We're not allowed to say the patch
Yeah.
notes date. I'm sorry. We did check before this.
Okay, a follow-up to that. When you say several days, can we as a collective then say that we would prefer to see them around a week before and not just a couple of days? Is that something that is more in line with what's going to go down, or we're talking literally a couple of days? Give or
I
take.
think we're keeping. I think we'll keep staying on the several.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
we just can't. We asked, but we weren't. We've already done too much damage anyways. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, let's keep our jobs here.
Avoid the suing process. We're going to wrap this up by thanking Mike and Carl for coming on for this interview. It's been a blast. Thank you so much for the, putting your job at risk and everything. Appreciate that very much. Next week, Friday, same time, I believe, right? You guys will be having a friend of mine, Talkative, try to talk about itemizations. I'll be sure tuning into that. Hope you guys that are watching will tune into that as well. And show some love for last Epoch. And very excited for the launch on the 2nd of April. Thanks so much for coming in, boys, and I'll see you guys later.
Thanks for having us. Great time.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.